Phoebe Stone was not supposed to be noticed. Not here, not now. She arrived at the Cornwall Inn alone, slipping through the grand revolving doors like a shadow. The hotel stood tall and pristine on the cliffs of Newport, Rhode Island, an oceanfront palace carved out of quiet wealth. It was the kind of place meant for honeymoons, anniversary weekends, or fairy tale weddings. But Phoebe wasn't here to celebrate. In her mind, this was the final stop. A soft landing. She hadn't told anyone, hadn't left notes or clues. Everything about this plan had been crafted with surgical precision, from the train ticket under an alias to the prepaid room on the third floor. She didn't want questions. She didn't want saving. She just wanted out. Her life had crumbled slowly, then, all at once. The divorce papers had been signed just months ago, but the emotional distance had begun long before that. Her friends, what few remained, had grown uncomfortable around her sadness, and even her therapist had offered little more than well-meaning nods and empty reassurances. So she came here, alone, to a place elegant enough to feel like a send-off. She didn't pack much, just the essentials. A small suitcase, a half-filled notebook, a bottle of pills she didn't intend to leave behind. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. From the moment she stepped into the Cornwall Inn, she realized she wasn't the only one arriving. Luggage carts overloaded with garment bags and gift baskets wheeled by. Staff buzzed around with clipboards and headsets. Champagne glasses clinked behind the bar. Laughter spilled out from somewhere down the hall. Phoebe blinked at the concierge. "Is something going on?" The young woman smiled with professional brightness. "Oh yes, we're hosting a very large wedding this weekend. Welcome to the party." The party. Phoebe could hardly imagine a worse setting for what she had planned. She'd picked the Cornwall because it was off-season, typically quiet. But clearly, someone had decided it was the perfect time for a dream wedding. She wanted to turn around. She almost did. But the exhaustion inside her was stronger than the urge to flee. So she nodded, accepted the room key, and rode the elevator to the third floor. She would stay one night, 2 at most. Then it would be over. That was the plan. Her room was beautiful, of course, coastal charm with cream-colored drapes and crisp white linens. The windows opened to a sea breeze, the faint sound of waves crashing below. It should have been peaceful. It almost was. Until the noise started. It wasn't loud at first, just a giggle. Then a burst of music. Someone ran down the hallway barefoot, trailing laughter and what smelled like mimosa breath. Phoebe peeked through the peephole. A bridesmaid, maybe. She rolled her eyes, slid the deadbolt shut, and pulled the comforter over her head. But the inn was alive now, and the wedding people had arrived. Downstairs, the celebration was blooming. The lobby was lined with calligraphy signs, pointing to cocktail hours and rehearsal dinners. A harpist tuned her instrument in the corner. The bride, glowing and slightly frantic, paced the marble floor while talking into her phone. Phoebe passed through like a ghost, trying not to draw attention. But people noticed her. Strangers smiled. One groomsman even asked if she was with the bride's side or the groom's. She gave a vague nod and kept walking. Something strange was beginning to happen. The inn was supposed to be a cocoon, a place to disappear. But instead, it was full of light, of laughter, of people hugging, joking, drinking, dancing. Phoebe felt like she was underwater, watching a different world unfold. And despite her resolve, something inside her stirred. It was the bride who finally stopped her. Not intentionally, just a moment of eye contact across the hallway. A glance held a second too long. The bride tilted her head, studying her. "Do I know you?" she asked softly, stepping closer. "No," Phoebe replied quickly, ready to walk away. But the bride smiled, bright and weirdly knowing. "You look like someone I should know?" Phoebe didn't answer. She just turned and left. But the moment clung to her like static. Back in her room, she poured a glass of water. Her suitcase sat by the dresser, untouched. The bottle of pills was still there, hidden. But something about that moment in the hallway. It wouldn't let her be. Phoebe had come here to vanish. Instead, she had been seen. Wonderful. Let's continue the story with, by morning, the Cornwall Inn was fully transformed. Floral arches framed the courtyard. Rows of folding chairs sparkled in the sun like pearl-white dominoes waiting to fall. Waitstaff moved in synchronized swarms, adjusting linen, aligning centerpieces, perfecting every tiny detail. And Phoebe? She watched it all from her window, coffee cup in hand, still in her robe, still unsure what she was doing here. The plan hadn't changed, but the energy around her had. She told herself to avoid the crowds, to stay quiet, unseen. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. By noon, she was downstairs again, weaving through strangers with sun-kissed cheeks and perfectly curated outfits. It was like stepping into a live-action Instagram feed. That's when it happened. A voice, soft but sure, called out behind her. "Phoebe, right?" She froze. How did they know her name? Turning slowly, she saw the bride. Not in a gown, not yet. Just jeans and a white tank top, barefoot on the hotel's checkerboard floor, sipping what looked like her third iced coffee. Sorry?" Phoebe replied, confused. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," the bride said, laughing. "You just looked like a Phoebe." She didn't. Phoebe had a forgettable face, one she'd always blended into the background with. But now, standing here under the bride's strange gaze, she felt oddly known. The bride held out a hand. "I'm Jasmine. You're not with the wedding, are you?" "No." Jasmine tilted her head. "Do you want to be?" Phoebe blinked. "Excuse me?" "Everyone's flaking," Jasmine sighed. "My cousin bailed last minute. We're short on bridesmaids. You could pass as family, sort of. You're tall." Phoebe laughed, an involuntary, surprised sound. "That's ridiculous." "Maybe, but you look like someone who needs a dress and a reason to dance." That sentence hung in the air like a dare. Phoebe declined, of course. Politely. She wasn't about to impersonate a guest. But something about Jasmine's offer made her heart race in a way it hadn't in a long time. Still, she stayed firm. No entanglements, no attachments. That was the rule. Yet the universe, persistent as ever, kept nudging. That evening, a groomsman knocked on her door by mistake, thinking it was someone else's room. They ended up talking in the hallway for 10 minutes about vinyl records. The hotel concierge offered her free champagne because you look like you could use some joy. A flower girl ran up to her out of nowhere, handed her a wilted daisy, and whispered, "This is for your sad." Each moment chipped away at the wall Phoebe had built. At dinner, she gave in and sat at the bar, far from the wedding party, but close enough to watch. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but Jasmine's voice carried. The bride was animated, telling stories, talking too fast, smiling too wide. The kind of energy that felt like a cover for something else. Phoebe knew the type. She had been the type. "You ever feel like everyone's watching but no one really sees you?" Jasmine said to her table. Her friends laughed like it was a joke, but Phoebe knew it wasn't. For reasons she couldn't explain, Phoebe walked over. Just to say goodnight. Just to acknowledge something. But Jasmine reached for her arm. "Wait," she said. "Can I ask you something?" Phoebe paused. "Sure. Were you ever in love with someone you thought you knew, and then they turned out to be someone else?" The room got quiet. Phoebe didn't answer right away, but the look she gave said more than words ever could. Jasmine nodded. "Yeah," she whispered. "Me too." Later that night, Phoebe sat on her balcony, staring out at the sea. The bottle of pills was still untouched, still there. But she felt unsettled. Not in the dangerous way, in the living way. She hadn't expected that, not here. She came to end something, but all around her, people were beginning things. Marriages, promises, toasts to futures. And against all logic, some part of her wanted to see how it all played out. Absolutely, let's keep the momentum going. Here's The Wedding People, Part 3, Disruption and Disguise. The next day, the storm rolled in. Not metaphorically, not yet. A real honest-to-God storm. Wind slamming shutters, waves crashing harder, rain hitting the windows like it was trying to get in. The sky turned a furious slate gray, and the pristine wedding plans started to crumble. The ceremony was meant to be held outdoors, under a flower-draped arch, overlooking the ocean. Now it was all chaos. Staff scrambled, chairs were dragged inside. The harpist nearly slipped on the marble floor. Phoebe, for once, wasn't hiding in her room. She was in the lobby, sipping tea, wrapped in a borrowed shawl, watching it all unfold with a strange kind of calm. Then, Jasmine found her again. "You're still here," she said, surprised. "I am." Jasmine looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was a frizzed halo, her phone glued to her hand. But she was smiling, barely. "We moved everything indoors. Everyone's freaking out. My aunt had a meltdown about the seating chart. My mom's re-ironing the groomsmen's pocket squares. And I'm just—" She shrugged. "Floating?" Phoebe nodded. "You look like you're holding it together." "I'm not," Jasmine said with a laugh too loud to be real. "I'm unraveling in slow motion." Then she sat beside Phoebe, uninvited but welcome. "You know," she said, "you're the calmest person here." Phoebe raised an eyebrow. "I think that says more about your guests than it does about me." But Jasmine didn't laugh this time. "Would you come with me?" she asked. "Just for a second. I need to breathe." Phoebe hesitated, but something in Jasmine's eyes, raw, unguarded, made it hard to say no. They slipped into a quiet hallway, past the chaos, past the silver platters and panicked planners, and found a small, forgotten room that smelled faintly of books and lavender. It was Jasmine's escape, her secret corner. And for the first time, she told Phoebe the truth. "I don't think I'm ready," she whispered. Phoebe froze. "For the wedding?" "For any of it. I think I'm marrying someone who doesn't really see me. I think I said yes because I was supposed to, because it looked right on paper. But in here," she touched her chest, "it feels like a performance." Phoebe exhaled slowly. "Then why are you doing it?" Jasmine looked away. "Because I've already told the world that I would. Because I don't know who I am if I don't." That hit too close. Phoebe had lived that life, making choices because they seemed right, saying "I do," because everyone expected her to. She'd played the part, and she'd lost herself in it. "You're allowed to change your mind," Phoebe said quietly. Jasmine stared at her. "Says the woman who checked into a hotel to disappear." Phoebe flinched. "I looked you up," Jasmine added. "Sorry, you gave a fake name, but your face. It was on a news site. Your divorce was in the headlines. Your husband's kind of famous, right?" Phoebe's mouth went dry. Jasmine softened. "I didn't mean to pry. I just wanted to understand you." That night, Phoebe didn't sleep much. Her mind spun with old memories. The glossy photos from her own wedding, the lies she told herself, the quiet ways she gave up pieces of who she was. Jasmine's words had cracked something open. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was tangled in this story. By morning, the skies cleared, but the tension hadn't. And in a strange twist, Phoebe found herself wearing a bridesmaid's dress. It was all a misunderstanding, really. One of the actual bridesmaids bailed. Jasmine begged. Phoebe refused, then relented, then regretted it. But it was too late. She'd been fitted, fluffed, and pinned into a pale blush gown before she could escape. Guests assumed she was part of the family. Some hugged her. Others complimented her earrings. She played along. Disguise was easy when you'd spent years pretending in your own life. But the real surprise was how natural it felt. Not the dress, not the heels, but the human connection. The way people welcomed her without question. The way Jasmine looked at her like she was an anchor in the storm. As she stood beside the bride for the rehearsal, Phoebe caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror across the room. She looked different, not younger, not happier, just present. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt like someone who might still belong in the world. Here we go with the next chapter of the journey: tension, secrets, and soul-bearing moments. The Wedding People, Part 4, Cracks and Confessions. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be elegant, polished, controlled. It was none of those things. The ballroom was gorgeous, yes. Soft lighting, string quartet, linen-covered tables. But beneath the beauty, emotions crackled like a frayed wire. Phoebe stood near the bar in her borrowed dress, sipping water with lime, watching the chaos swirl around her. The groom's father gave a speech that wandered from heartfelt to humiliating, revealing a little too much about the couple's history. The maid of honor toasted with a shaky hand and accidentally knocked over a candle. And Jasmine? Jasmine looked like she was drowning in slow motion, even as she smiled for the photos. Phoebe wasn't supposed to be there. She kept reminding herself of that. She wasn't part of this world. But the truth was, she was no longer an outsider. Somewhere along the way, she'd slipped through the cracks and become part of the narrative. After dinner, Jasmine pulled her aside again. They walked down to the beach, barefoot in the cool sand, the wind pulling at their hair like a restless child. "You ever think," Jasmine asked, "that your life isn't really yours? That you're just playing the part everyone expects?" Phoebe didn't even have to think. Every day. Until recently. What changed? Phoebe paused. I let it fall apart. Jasmine stopped walking. And did that help? Eventually. I think pain clears the way for clarity, if you let it. Jasmine looked out at the ocean. I don't want to hurt anyone. Sometimes, Phoebe said gently, hurting others is the cost of not destroying yourself. They sat in silence after that. Phoebe could see it, how tightly Jasmine was holding on to the image of what her life was supposed to look like. But her fingers were slipping. And that image? It was starting to blur. Back at the hotel, another surprise was waiting. A letter. Slipped under Phoebe's door, in an envelope with her real name. Her breath caught. She opened it slowly, hands trembling. It was from her ex-husband. Just 3 lines. I saw the photos online. You look like a stranger. I hope that means you're becoming yourself again. I never really knew you, did I? No signature. Just the handwriting she once could spot in a crowd. Phoebe sat on the edge of the bed, the letter on her lap. For a moment, she let herself feel it all. Grief, relief, confusion, hope. It wasn't closure, not really. But it was something. Maybe a beginning. The storm outside had passed, but inside the Cornwall Inn, the air was thick with emotion. The night before the wedding is always charged. Secrets start slipping. People get honest. Maybe it's the champagne. Maybe it's fear. Phoebe wandered into the hallway and found a groomsman crying quietly on the phone. I don't think I love her, he whispered. I think I just don't want to be alone. She didn't stop. She didn't need to. Everyone here was carrying something. Later, Jasmine knocked on Phoebe's door. No dress, no makeup. Just her, raw and scared. Can I sleep here tonight? She asked. Phoebe let her in without a word. They didn't talk much. They lay side by side in the dim room, the distant sound of waves lapping at the shore. 2 women, strangers once, now bound by the quiet, aching knowledge of what it means to lose yourself, and the slow, defiant courage it takes to begin again. Tomorrow would bring decisions, the ceremony, the walk down the aisle. But for now, there was just this moment. And in that moment, Phoebe didn't feel like she was disappearing anymore. She felt real. Let's step into the heart of it all. The wedding day. Here's The Wedding People. Part 5. Turning Point. The morning of the wedding arrived in full color. Sunlight spilled through the windows like an apology for the storm. The air smelled of salt, roses, and nervous energy. Inside the Cornwall Inn, the wedding machine whirred to life. Stylists, photographers, a makeup artist with too much caffeine and too little patience. Phoebe stood in the corner of the bridal suite, once again in borrowed blush satin, watching as Jasmine sat in front of the mirror. She looked beautiful, radiant even. But Phoebe saw through it, the tight smile, the stillness in her shoulders, the distant eyes. She recognized that look. It was the same one Phoebe had worn on her own wedding day. Jasmine caught her reflection in the mirror, then turned. "What did you feel before you walked down the aisle?" she asked. Phoebe hesitated. Then, "Like I was walking into someone else's life." Jasmine didn't reply, but her lips pressed together, like she was trying to keep her soul from spilling out. The ceremony was held indoors, but the staff had transformed the ballroom into a wonderland of hanging florals and candlelight. The guests were seated, the music began, and the room held its collective breath. Phoebe stood beside the other bridesmaids, hands clasped, and then Jasmine appeared at the top of the stairs. The crowd gasped, not because of the dress, though it was exquisite, but because Jasmine looked unearthly, still, composed, almost too calm. She descended the staircase slowly, like she was moving through water. Halfway down, she paused. Phoebe saw it, the moment. The split-second hesitation, the flicker of doubt, the inhale that seemed too deep. Then Jasmine looked over, not at the groom, at Phoebe. And Phoebe, without even realizing it, shook her head. Just once. The smallest gesture. But it was enough. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Jasmine turned and walked back up the stairs. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She just walked, head high, spine straight, like a woman stepping out of someone else's dream. The music stopped. The groom looked frozen, blinking as if reality had short-circuited. Guests murmured. A few stood up. One of the groomsmen cursed under his breath. Phoebe stayed still. Then, gently, she followed Jasmine. She found her in the same little room, with the books and lavender scent, sitting on the couch in her wedding dress, barefoot, hair starting to fray at the edges. "I did it," Jasmine whispered. "You did." "I feel terrified?" Jasmine laughed. "Relieved." She turned to Phoebe, eyes wide and shining. "Thank you. You didn't say a word, but I felt it. I knew I wasn't crazy." "You're not," Phoebe said. "You're just honest. Finally." They sat in silence for a while, the muffled chaos of the ballroom fading behind thick walls. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left or booked early checkouts, Phoebe and Jasmine walked the grounds together. Jasmine still wore her dress, dirtied at the hem, slightly wrinkled. She didn't care. They wandered toward the cliffside, where the ceremony was meant to take place. The view was still stunning. The sea still sang its endless lullaby. "I don't know what happens now," Jasmine said. "You don't have to," Phoebe replied. "You just have to let yourself be alive enough to figure it out." Jasmine looked at her. "Is that what you're doing?" Phoebe nodded. "For the first time in years." As the sun began to dip, casting a golden glow over the inn, Phoebe turned toward her room. The bottle of pills was gone. She'd flushed them that morning, without fanfare, without drama, just gone. She didn't need them anymore. She had walked through a life she thought was over and found pieces of herself waiting at the edges. And somehow, in the most unexpected place, among strangers and champagne flutes and shattered expectations, she'd chosen to stay. The Cornwall Inn felt like a different place in the morning. The flower petals had been swept up, the champagne glasses cleared. The air, which had buzzed with anticipation for days, now hummed with something gentler. Stillness. Space. The lawn was empty, except for a single folding chair left behind, tilted slightly, like someone had just left it. Jasmine was gone. She'd left before sunrise, with nothing but a small bag and a cab waiting outside. No dramatic farewells. Just a quiet knock on Phoebe's door, a long hug, and a whispered, "Thank you for saving me." Phoebe didn't try to stop her. She understood. Some roads had to be walked alone. Later, as she checked out, the same concierge from her first day greeted her with that same bright smile. But this time, Phoebe smiled back. "Leaving us so soon?" the woman asked. "Not soon," Phoebe replied. "Just on time." She turned in her key. Her real name was on the reservation now. She'd asked them to update it. She wasn't hiding anymore. Outside, the air was crisp and clean, and the sea stretched wide in every direction. She stood for a moment at the top of the steps, suitcase beside her, breathing it all in. There was no plan, no destination yet, but for once the unknown didn't feel terrifying. It felt open. As she walked toward the road to wait for her ride, she passed a wedding guest still lingering on the patio, sipping coffee. He smiled at her. "Crazy weekend, huh?" he said. Phoebe paused. "The best kind," she answered. He tilted his head. "Were you family?" Phoebe considered it. "No," she said with a small smile. "I was just someone who showed up." He nodded slowly, not quite understanding, but she didn't expect him to. Because sometimes the most important roles are the ones you never plan to play. That afternoon, Phoebe boarded a train heading away from Newport. She didn't know where she'd get off. She just knew she was moving forward. For the first time in a long, long while, she felt weightless, not because she was empty, but because she was finally free.